Welcome to another episode of Erik Wait Whiskey Studies, and in this video, gonna do a review of the Cragganmore Distillers Edition. I believe this is the 22 release. Can't find anything on the box or on the bottle. But before I get into this, I'm gonna tell you about the history of Cragganmore Distillery and the profile of this whiskey. Cragganmore Distillery is located in the village of Ballindelloch in Banffshire, Scotland. In 1869, Cragganmore Distillery was founded by John Smith on land leased from Sir George Macpherson Grant. The site was chosen by Smith both for its proximity to the waters of the Craggan Burn and because it was close to the Strathspey Railway. Smith was an experienced distiller, having already been manager of Macallan, Glenlivet, Glenfarclas, and Wishaw distilleries. In 1886, John Smith died and his brother George took over operations. In 1893, John's son Gordon, at 21, is old enough to assume responsibility for operations. In 1901, Cragganmore Distillery was refurbished and modernized with the help of Charles Doig. In 1912, Gordon Smith died and his widow, Mary Jane, supervised operations. In 1917, Cragganmore Distillery was closed. In 1918, Cragganmore Distillery reopened and Mary Jane installed electric lighting. In 1923, the distillery was sold to the newly formed Cragganmore Glenlivet Distillery Company, Limited, owned equally by the Ballindelloch Estate and by Whitehorse Distillers Limited. In 1927, the Whitehorse Distillers share, that is 50%, of Cragganmore Distillery was passed to the Distillers Company Limited, or DCL. In 1964, Cragganmore increased its number of stills from 2 to 4. In 1965, Distillers Company Limited acquired the remaining shares of Cragganmore Distillery. In 1988, Cragganmore 12 is chosen by United Distillers to represent the Speyside in their Classic Malt series. In 2002, Cragganmore Distillery opened its visitor center. Cragganmore The Distillers Edition Single Malt Scotch Whisky. It was double matured in port-seasoned American oak casks. It's bottled at 40% alcohol by volume and sells for about $86 in my neighborhood. So, it's a 40 ABV whiskey. And I know a lot of us whiskey enthusiasts, when we see 40 ABV, we kind of roll our eyes and go, ho hum. Let's move on to the next one. I gotta say, Cragganmore, but this one and the 12-year-old that you can find out there readily on the market, even though, yes, they're 40 ABV. Yes, I wish they had a little bit more oomph. Yes, I wish it had more in the mid-palate. But I gotta say, I would say these are the two best 40 ABV whiskeys out there, and I particularly like this one. Now, it says double matured in port casks, but doesn't come across as your typical port cask. Typically, port casks, I get more of the sort of maybe blackberry, jammy notes out of it, maybe blueberry, something like that. This is spicier than what I typically get from a port cask. In fact, if I were to do this whiskey blind, I might be tempted to think that it was actually spent some time in sherry casks. So I get a little bit of black raisins, do get a little bit of blueberry black character there, but not as much as I would typically find. But what's really popping out on the nose is spice. It's a spice rack out of your cabinet. Get a little bit of vanilla, cinnamon, nutmeg, a little bit of ginger. It's just got a lot of spice going on. Hints of vanilla, some nice floral notes on the palate. Usually when I say wow, it's because of the kapow of the strength of a whiskey. This is just impressive as to what they're able to maintain in a 40 ABV whiskey. I like the texture. It's got a silky texture to it, but it's got a nice mouthfeel to it. Get those black raisins, blackberry, black fruit notes. Mid-palate, the spice shows up. Cinnamon, nutmeg. I get a little bit of ginger there. And it's got a nice long finish. When I was sipping this whiskey, I got it down here, even from a neck pour, and I'm watching television, watching a movie, and I had it off to the side, so I wasn't focused on the whiskey. I was focused on what I was watching on the television, and the whiskey started to catch my attention. I was like, damn, this is actually a really enjoyable whiskey. I don't always, or frequently don't want a whiskey that I got to fuss with. I like a nice grab and go whiskey. Pour yourself some, sit down, whether you're reading a book or watching a movie or typing away on the computer, that you can just pour and go. And this is it. If you're going to first introduce someone to whiskey, you want to start with something that's not going to overwhelm them. Although I did a video on a friend's channel in which I was introducing him to whiskey. He's a wine sommelier, works for a winery, and we did a lineup of whiskeys, and I was introducing him to Scotch. And it started off with the Cragganmore 12. And he found it quite overwhelming, even though it's at 40 ABV. You gotta remember, most wines are gonna be 13.5, 14.5 at the most. You're jumping to 40 ABV, it's twice the level. So for a lot of, say, non-typical whiskey drinkers, 40 ABV is actually gonna be quite high. But I think the quality of this whiskey, even at 40 ABV, yeah, it's probably got some, cold chill filtering. Although the coloring on this doesn't look like what's typically what I see in colored whiskeys. It's still got a slight reddish wine tinge. I don't know if that's showing up on the camera all that well. It doesn't feel as thin as your typical 40 ABV. It doesn't feel as thin as a whiskey that has been chill filtered. A lot of chill filtered whiskeys that I've had, they feel too watery in the mid palate. In fact, most whiskeys at 40 ABV to me come across as just too watery. This is the exception to the rule, and I really like this whiskey. It's got a nice development, it's got a nice long finish. Now, as most whiskeys do, it gets better after you get past the neck pour. This bottle's been open for several weeks, so it's had time to aerate, and it's just gotten better and better and better. What am I gonna give it in terms of score? I'm gonna go 88 points. 88 points. What would I want in order to get it up over into the 90s? Maybe a more bold mid palate, a little more oomph in the mid palate. What would it take to get there? Probably at least get this thing up to 46% ABV. I would like to see it at 46% ABV. But other than that, if you're looking for a whiskey, even if you're not a novice or looking to get something for a novice, you're looking for something that isn't going to tire you out. You can have more than 1 dram without getting schlammoed, and yet you want something that's a real high quality. I gotta go. Hey, Cragganmore. Cragganmore as a distillery, but particularly this release of the Distillers Edition. Absolutely, I think it's a fantastic whiskey. Price-wise, it's a little up there. You're looking 80s and 90s. I can get, Ardbeg 10-year-olds still 55 to 65 bucks. Non-chill filtered, natural color, 46% ABV. Of course, that's a peated whiskey, so you're talking a completely different category. But the price is going to be the biggest holdback on this one. What do I think this whiskey deserves? I know prices these days on Scotch whiskeys is going nuts. I think this is more of your $60 whiskey. I think it's a little overpriced, but other than that, I think it's an excellent whiskey. All right, that's it for this review. If you subscribe to this channel, I want to thank you very much. If If you've not yet subscribed, but you like watching my videos, I would greatly appreciate it if you would subscribe, ring the bell to be notified, and I'm gonna put a link to the Cragganmore 12-year-old review at the end of this video. All right, till next time, Slàinte. Hey, don't forget to subscribe and check out these other whiskey videos.